A reflex profile is a profile with a moment coefficient which is positive. It means that there is like a hand holding the nose of the profile and always want to lift it up. The great advantage is the fact that in turbulence, with a kind of a standard profile, you would eventually go to the point where the wing will go and collapse. Because of this like magic hand, then in the turbulence, the profile will kind of go through the turbulence and recover without collapsing, which is a great thing in high-speed stability for paramotoring and also in paragliding. The downside is, as you can imagine, because this is always holding the profile back, in flying, if you look at all the high angle tests, the recovery will be just slower than any other type profile, because once stalled, it will just be hard to recover. And the other part is also, during the inflation, then it's just taking longer to go above the pilot's head because of this tendency to always want to stay behind. So we have spent quite a long time to try to balance, in fact, the amount of reflex we would need to get the high stability, collapse resistance we want at high speed, but without having too much of the downside of these reflex profiles. We have created the OZRP, Ozone Reflex Profile, which we think is the perfect balance between the amount of reflex needed to get the high collapse resistance and also a very forgiving behavior without having the downsides, the big downsides of the reflex, which are slow takeoff and borderline behavior in high angle tests. Today we have in our range the Indy, which is the beginner wing, designed to be the perfect wing to learn the first part of the sport, which is taking off, flying around and landing safely. Then above that we've got the Roadster, which is the first wing to get, which gets the benefit of the first part of the technology of the Ozone Reflex Profile. And above that we have now the Speedster, which has quite a lot of reflex and good compromise between aspect ratio, sail not too complicated, so it remains quite light, so easy for takeoff, easy all round. And above that we have the Viper 2, which is designed for expert pilots flying basically in competition or going for records. When we started Ozone Power, Mathieu Rouanet was flying for us. He was actually flying some wings from the free flying range, and he was actually doing very well, but was complaining that against the full-on reflex wings, he was not able to compete because he was short of speed and stability. So he said, I want a wing that keeps the great performance of the free-flying wings, but can you add these good features of the reflex profile? So with quite a lot of research, then we came up with the first wing, which was the Viper, which was the first generation of this new type of profile, which seemed to be the best compromise you can get with the best of the two worlds, the performance and the stability.
Right, well I just went out flying and it was the first time that I've used the Roadster wing, and I really liked the wing. It came up really easily, it was really good to get under control. Up in the air it went exactly where I wanted it to, and another thing that I noticed was when I came in it flared beautifully and I had a really soft landing, which for me is always a worry, so that was really nice.
So some gliders have two hang points on the risers, and that is because most paramotors have their hookups way up here. And if it's up here, you want to bring the wing down further, otherwise you're going to have your brakes are going to be way up here to operate it. You want your hands pretty much the same as it would be in free flight, about where your ears are is what I like. And on this particular motor, it's a low hang point, so I use the regular bottom riser. The upper riser would be used if you had a higher hang point. It's much better, it brings it down a little bit.
The different options you have to take off in Paramotor basically are with the trimmers. So you have all this range of trimmers that you can use, but I would recommend you to go on half trimmers or maybe full trimmers out. So what is the difference? If I trim maximum in that position, the glider will be very efficient. It will have a lot of lift. But the problem is that it will be very difficult to deflate and to control while it's on your head. Now I can untrim like half, like that. So your glider will really come up easier. In this position, half trimmers out, it will be really easier to grab your glider over your head. And of course we'll have to run maybe a little bit more and a little bit faster. And on this position, which is full trimmers open, definitely your glider will inflate over your head very easily. And of course you will have to run a little bit faster. I would recommend you to take off first when you receive your ozone wing on the half trimmers, and then slowly go upper and upper, open your trimmers. And as you release the trimmers almost to full position, you will notice that your glider just inflates easier. Also, you will have to run a bit faster, of course, but your distance to take off from the first step to the last step will not be much longer than if you take off full trimmers closed. Why? Because in that position your glider is very lazy and it's very hard to take it over your head. And in this position, full trimmers out or half, it will really inflate very quickly. So the distance only for the inflation will reduce like half, and you will have more or less same distance to take off. This advice I give you on the trimmers works very well on the ozone wings, but be careful on the other brands. The profile might be more reflex or less reflex, and it might work differently. Having the speed bar set up and ready to go is always good, because you might one day need it. If for instance the wind increases, or if you have a problem, it's always good to have this 5 or 10 kilometers per hour of reserve in your pocket. So when you want to fly faster, you have the possibility, of course, to untrim your wing and also to add speed bar with that, and you will gain probably like 10 kilometers per hour or more, which is very good when it's very windy, or if you have a friend which is very heavy on a very fast wing, you might need to use it. So when you use your speed bar, just go gently. You can go up to the full speed bar, it's really no problem. You have to adjust your speed bar very well, of course, on a few flights. And then you can use your wingtip steering system. So you can let go your brakes of your hand if it's not turbulent, and then go and take your small wingtip steerings with your thumb. And you will see that it's very, very precise on the Viper, for instance, and you can really have very precise turn, maybe even more than the brake, which is funny. But remember that you cannot really make a pitch with it, so it does not replace the brakes at all. When you are in the configuration of the full speed, means full trimmers open and full speed bar, you must not use your brake, because in this configuration your wing might collapse because of the reflex and also make something like opposite turn. So it's not usable. And that's why the wingtip steerings are done, is to be able to direct yourself and to turn in that configuration. When you're flying fast with the full trimmers open and the full speed bar on, sometimes if it's a bit turbulent, you could have some small dive and resource, and you could be able to pilot it, maybe just using your speed bar. A little bit as a brake, you know, but it's not a brake anymore, it's just the speed bar. That means that if you feel like a lift and your glider wants to take you up, you could put a little bit more of speed bar. And then if you feel like a dive, you could maintain your motor and just release a little bit of your speed bar, and you will be able to make not so much as a dolphin, but more level. This is an efficient way to keep your level.
A lot of the older Paramotor wings and nearly all of the newer ones feature some system of what we call tip steering. And I get asked, what's tip steering? What's all that about? Well, tip steering is basically just braking the wing out towards its outboard tips. Normally we'd only use the tip steering toggles or the tip steering system when the wing is flying fast. So in other words, when we've let the trimmers out, we've obviously got the brakes right up, we've let the trimmers right out, and maybe even speed bar. Therefore now we've got a lot of airspeed over the wing, so we only need really to pull just a little bit of brake down to effect a turn. We don't really want to use the main brakes because of two reasons. One, we don't need that much brake when we've got that much airspeed, and two, if the wing has actually got some reflex in it, we're going to be destroying the reflex. So we'll leave the brakes parked on the magnets or the keepers, we'll reach across to the tip steering. We'll effect a turn by using just the tip steering line, which just goes up to the outboard corner of the wing. And of course you have the old, the physics lesson where you've got the moment of leverage. So a little bit of deflection on a very outboard end of a lever has a great turning effect. Tip steering is very useful and very, very handy system to have. Can I just add as well that if you are doing some low flying and you think that you're only going to be using your tip steering system, you might just want to have another think and always keep the main brakes in your hand at the same time. Just in case that engine stops and you've suddenly got to land and then you're not faffing for like leaving the tip steering lines go and then trying to get the brakes in your hand. You've already got the brakes in your hand.
You have two possibilities to use your wingtip steerings. The first one is like it's not turbulent at all and you are able to let go your brakes. So then you can just take your wingtip steerings with a thumb and pull it. And you can even pull it very low if you want. It will not spin. So you can do that. Your wing is like that. Really, it looks like it's really ugly, but it doesn't collapse, it doesn't spin. And I want to say to people that they don't have to do it. But look, I can do that. That means that if you just put 10 centimeters, it will not spin, don't worry. The second possibility to use your wingtip steerings is when it's turbulent and when you don't want to let go your brakes because you might need it in case of a stronger turbulence, is to just keep your brakes and come and take over upper the pulley, the line of the wingtip steering, and just use it a little bit like you should make the big ears. So you don't use the brakes at this moment and you just use the TST. And in case of a small collapse or in case of a stronger turbulence, you are able to let go the wingtip steerings but still have the brakes on your hand, which is important when it's turbulent.
A pilot buying a wing should know what certification rating it got and in which position, which trimmer position it's been certified. That is quite important to know where to fly. It's important that the pilots read the manual and read the recommendations from the manufacturers. In our case, we recommend to fly using mainly the accelerator because of the great reversibility option it gives.
With paragliders, we don't tend to have trimmers, but with paramotor wings, specific paramotor wings, we do have trimmers, and they're very useful devices. Basically, all a trimmer does is alter the angle of attack of the wing. They can be used together or independently. We can use them for both making the takeoff and landing a lot easier, so we can use different trimmer positions for different wind conditions. And also, paramotors, when they're turning and burning, they exhibit a force in the opposite direction to the propeller, a torque, a turning force. And that always imparts a small turning force on the wing in flight. So if we're actually flying from A to B, it gets very, very tedious to actually maintain opposite brake the whole time just to fly straight. So what we can do is we can asymmetrically use the trimmers just to trim out that torque turn. So the trimmers are very useful things.
You can fly with the trimmers totally out basically all the time. If it's just not turbulent, really perfect flight, even no wind, you have the best maneuverability on your ozone wing, like that. And basically, as much as it's turbulent, you should also untrim maximum, or at least almost maximum, because it's turbulent, and that's where you have reflex. And the benefits of the reflex are it's stronger in turbulence, it won't collapse as much as a paraglider, so basically it's done for turbulence. You should probably fly untrimmed almost all the time, unless you want to climb a bit faster and unless you don't want to run fast. I wouldn't say long on the takeoff, but you wouldn't run fast on the takeoff. It's the same also for the landing. If you are not used to arrive very strongly, you should maybe trim a bit, like half, or go to the neutral. What is very good with the Ozone wings and the Ozone range is that you can use the trimmers maybe better than other wings. And in the case you have no wind, one more time the difficulty is to put your glider over your head. And in that case, if you untrim a bit, it will be of course easier because your glider is faster, it wants to climb on your head faster. And what is good in Ozone range is that you can untrim maximum to be able to have a very fast climb. So of course your running will be faster, you'll have to run a bit faster, but as your distance to inflate your wing on your head is slightly smaller, in fact you will take off more or less the same distance. So that means that you will take off faster in run, but it doesn't mean that you will take off in a more larger distance. Also, having your wing a little bit untrimmed or maybe maximum untrimmed mean that you will have more precision on your turns, on your control, because your glider doesn't want to stall as much and it really wants to fly. So that's a good point. I would say that this kind of takeoff is maybe not possible untrimmed maximum with other brands, and that's why the Ozone Reflex is just the good amount to be able to do everything untrimmed. Take off, fly, it's where you have the best maniability and you don't have these balloonings outside the turns, and also the landing if you want. You just need a small technique, you just need to learn it a bit, and then it's easier. With the Indy, you can help yourself if there's no wind on the ground with untrimming it a little bit, but like say half. You can also land in that position, and it makes your wing easier on the launch to take it over your head and also to have a little bit of flare. But generally people are just beginners, so it might be easier to land on the neutral position on the Indy. With the Roadster, which has a little bit more amount of reflex, in fact it's very easy to do everything full trimmers out. You won't really run so faster. You won't run longer for sure, but the good thing is that your wing will climb on the head very easily and very quickly for a very quick takeoff. On the landing also you can untrim maximum. The speed is really good enough, the angles are very easy to control, and you might have a small beginning of flare without to have something like a Top Gun. The Speedster has a little bit more amount of reflex, and it's funny because it looks like the Speedster fly faster than the Viper. But because of this addition of reflex, you cannot really take off full trimmers out. You can, but you might have to run faster and longer. So I recommend you to take off at the middle position or maybe 3/4. The landing is very easy if you want to land like a neutral position, half trimmers position, or also if you have a little bit of experience, you can land full trimmers out. It's quite easy. On the Speedster you might untrim a little bit, maybe you can go to 3/4 of the distance of the trim's distance, but I wouldn't recommend you to go full trimmers out because of the addition of reflex. You might have to run longer, faster, and maybe it's better to trim just a little bit for the takeoff. On the Viper you can take off fully untrimmed, you can land fully untrimmed. You're supposed to be a little bit better pilot, so you are able to control some angles a little bit harder and a little bit faster. And in fact, this wing is easy because you have the best control of all the parameters on this position. Takeoff, flying, if you want to be maneuverable, and landing on the flares. If you are scared by speed, of course you can trim a little bit, it's also very easy. For climbing, I would advise you to, of course, to trim a little bit more, because if your idea is just to climb, just trim it. And if it's not turbulent, you can go up to maximum trims, and your climb rate will be very good. If you want really to fly fast, you could put also accelerator, the speed bar, and then you will fly really fast. If it's not turbulent at all, you might just use your wingtip steerings, which is very precise, and you can just control your direction. If it's a bit turbulent, you might skip, of course, the brakes in the hand in case in case you have a collapse, which might not happen, but we never know. And so then the first thing you should do is to release the speed bar and then use your brakes. With the motor, of course, you have to adjust because more speed bar you put, more power you'll need to stay at the level. So you just maintain your level with the motor. And hopefully your motor is big enough to maintain very high speeds. The only way to know if you are, when you are trimmers open and eventually full speed bar, to know if you maintain the level is to have a vario, of course. So if you see that you are sinking a bit, you just might put a little bit more of power or more power again. And if you see that you are climbing, just release a little bit or put a little bit more of speed bar for the same amount of power. Of course, if you are very low, like 1 meter off the ground, you just make everything visually. You won't watch the vario for that. And I think it's survival. You see that you are 1 meter. If you see that you sink, you might take away your speed bar or put a little bit of brake.